is Ria from English Education A 2018, the student of University of Sulawesi Barat. And now I'm going to explain my understanding of theoretical model 5 hypotheses by Stephen D. Carson. So let's begin and happy watching! The first hypothesis is the acquisition learning hypothesis. This hypothesis states that adults have two different ways of developing competence in a second language. They are acquisition and learning. Acquisition is the unconscious or natural process of language acquisition for developing linguistic abilities, which is very similar to the process that children go through when they acquire their first language. While learning is a conscious process that produces knowledge of language. For example, knowledge of grammar rules or formal knowledge of language. Jadi, dalam hipotesis ini ada dua cara untuk menguasai bahasa atau bahasa kedua, yaitu acquisition atau akuisisi dan learning atau belajar. Nah, acquisition itu kita memperoleh bahasa secara alami atau di alam bawah sadar kita. Sedangkan learning adalah kita memperoleh bahasa secara sadar dengan cara mempelajarinya. The second hypothesis is the natural order hypothesis. This hypothesis states that grammatical structure are obtained, not necessarily learned, in a predictable order. The natural order hypothesis doesn't state that each acquirer will acquire the grammatical structure in the exact same order. This implies that, in general, certain language structure tend to be acquired early and acquired late. One part of grammar that is well studied in language acquisition is the morphology of English. It is an established finding that there is a natural sequence for the acquisition of the morphology of English for children learning English as a first language. Jadi, hipotesis ini menyatakan bahwa struktur tata bahasa diperoleh tidak harus dipelajari dalam urutan yang sama. Beberapa struktur bahasa cenderung diperoleh lebih awal dan diperoleh terlambat. The third hypothesis is the monitor hypothesis. The monitor hypothesis describes the relationship between acquisition and learning and defines the effect of learning on prior learning. This hypothesis states that conscious learning has a very limited function in adult second language performance. It can only be used as a monitor or editor. This hypothesis says that when we produce speech in a second language, it is initiated by the acquired system, and our conscious learning only comes into play later. There are three requirements that must be met in order to use the monitor successfully. The first is the perpetrator must have enough time. The second is the learner must think about the truth or focus on verb. And the third is perpetrators must know the rules. Jadi, hipotesis ini mengatakan bahwa ketika kita menghasilkan ucapan dalam bahasa kedua, ucapan tersebut diprakarsai oleh sistem yang diperoleh, dan pembelajaran yang kita pelajari secara sadar hanya berperan setelahnya. Next hypothesis is the input hypothesis. The input hypothesis states that comprehension of listening and reading is paramount in language programming, and that the ability to speak or write fluently in a second language will present itself with time. Speaking fluency is just not taught directly. Conversely, a speaking ability emerges after an acquired builds competence through understanding input. According to this hypothesis, the learner advances and develops along the natural order when he or she receives second language input, which is one step beyond his current stage of linguistic competence. For example, if a student is in stage 1, then the acquisition occurs when he or she is faced with comprehensible input, which is input in level 1+1. Jadi, dalam hipotesis ini menyatakan bahwa pemahaman mendengarkan dan membaca adalah yang terpenting dalam program bahasa, dan kemampuan untuk berbicara atau menulis dengan lancar dalam bahasa kedua akan datang dengan sendirinya seiring waktu. The last hypothesis is the effective filter hypothesis. This hypothesis states that the attitude variables related to success in second language acquisition are generally directly related to language acquisition but not necessarily with language learning. Attitude variables include motivation, self-confidence, anxiety, and personality traits. Carson claims that studying with high motivation, self-confidence, good self-image, low levels of anxiety and extroversion are better equipped to success in mastering a second language. Jadi, hipotesis ini menyatakan bahwa variabel sikap yang berkaitan dengan keberhasilan dalam penguasaan bahasa kedua umumnya berhubungan langsung dengan penguasaan bahasa, tetapi tidak harus dengan pembelajaran bahasa. So, I think enough for me.